Hello, everybody, and happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party, the one time of the week where Anthony and I know what day and time it is. It's Friday at 4 p.m. Central, which means it's time for the Back Catalog Listening Party, where we talk with different guest artists about old records. And we listen to songs together, talk about them, and answer your questions. And it's also our musical happy hour. And I just want to say it's been kind of a rough week. So I am really happy for this. And I poured myself a nice open scotch because it deserved that kind of day. And I don't know, what are you drinking over there, Tony?
Well, I actually switched it up. I was going to have a nicey cold beer today, but in honor of the first snowflakes that fell in Minnesota this year, I poured a little bit of a little wine here today, a little red wine.
Nice. And Chris Matthews joining us from DC today. What are you drinking?
I am drinking some sweet and spicy tea with a little bit of honey and some essential oils. It's delicious.
Oh,
That
nice.
sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And of course, Alan joining us from Texas, always with the gin and tonic, always the first to the party. Connie, hi from Richfield. And also, Alan says he voted today. So he
did
says
I.
Yeah, that's right. You posted a photo of you, and you were wearing a pretty dapper outfit.
Yeah, tradition.
Red suit. Yes, exactly. And we have Vermont. Let's see, Chris joining us, also from Minnesota. Yeah, it's true. 82 degrees last Friday on Back Catalog, and now 30s and snowy. So you never know what you'll get. Penny and again, we are so happy to have you all joining us today. And let us know what you're drinking, how you're feeling on this Friday. Again, this is the best part of my week. So
It really is.
I'm feeling good now. And cheers to all of you. Thank you
Yes,
for joining
cheers.
us.
Thanks for being here.
Cheers, everybody.
And I'm so excited about today's show because I have to say, as I was looking back on, you know how like you get memories of the past year on Facebook and all these things like show up in your feed and you're like, and then you kind of right now that we can't go anywhere or very limited places, you think back and you're like, oh, remember when I used to hang out with people and hang out with musicians, which is why we love this back catalog because we get to hang out at least online virtually. But I was realizing that even though I had a newborn babe, I was so happy that I took the time out last year to go to both the Northeast Regional Folk Alliance Conference in Connecticut and the big Folk Alliance International Conference in New Orleans in January before everything shut down. Mainly because I got to meet you, Chris. That was like one of my musical highlights because I had gotten to know your last record, These Old Hands, and put it on my radio show, but I never got to see you perform live in person. And we got to share in the round thing at the Northeast Regional Folk Alliance Conference, and it was truly one of my musical highlights. And getting to know you and hear your music performed live was just such a treat. So
likewise, it was such a pleasant surprise. It's like, and she's the radio host. It's so cool.
Well,
so good on the banjo. It's awesome.
Awesome. Well, and I hear. I saw some photos from your social media this week because you were up in Vermont on a little sort of vacation away from the interwebs. And I heard that banjo was creeping its way into and right now you're surrounded by banjo players.
Excellent.
Now
Excellent.
on
That's
Back
awesome.
Catalog Listening
Yes,
Party.
I am desperately hoping that my 2021 will bring some banjo credibility to my life. I just recorded my first song on banjo for release. So
All right.
slowly but surely, I'm getting more and more comfortable.
Excellent. Well, we will very much look forward to that. But of course, you grew up with some legit Appalachian roots, growing up in North Carolina. For folks who maybe aren't as familiar with you or your music, maybe you want to give us a brief little bio of you and what kind of led up to this record that we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. So I am originally from southeastern North Carolina, a little town near the coast called Richland, the town of perfect water. And but I went to college at Appalachian State University, so right in the heart of the Blue Ridge, heavy Doc Watson country there. So, and that's actually where I learned to write songs. So a lot of the influence of bluegrass can be kind of just heard all through my music, just because that's where I learned to write songs, is in bluegrass country. So the album that we're going to talk about today, Come What May, actually was written after I moved from North Carolina, from Boone, to Northern Virginia, and fell in love with a lovely girl from Virginia. And so still lots of roots in the bluegrass, lots of hints of that gorgeous tradition. So I'm so stoked to revisit those songs.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and we're really excited to do that too. And I have to say that it sounds like then the banjo was inevitable. It was going to happen at
Doesn't
some
it?
point.
Yeah.
It was probably your youthful rebellion where you're like, no banjo, no
Yeah.
banjo, and now you're like, okay, fine, banjo. Um, well, we are so excited to talk about this record, and to be honest, this was, I'm working backwards in my Chris Matthews knowledge because
Yeah.
I knew your most recent album first, and now I've been working my way backwards. I've been listening a lot this summer to Battle Hymn for an Army of Lovers, which has felt very appropriate right now.
Yes, indeed.
But now we're going back to, and is this your first record, or where does this
No,
come in your
this is
catalog?
actually the fourth. This is actually
Oh,
my
wow.
fourth album.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how many do you have you released?
Eight
Wow.
albums.
Okay.
Yeah.
In a pretty short span of time too. I
Yeah.
mean,
A lot of songs. They just, it wasn't as fast until 2016, and just like whatever reason, just song after song after song after song.
There's been a lot of inspiration, I will
So
say.
much. So much.
Well, okay. So this one is your fifth album. Came out in 2014. Come what may, and the first song we have queued up is "Prodigal Son." Is there anything you want to say about this before we dive into it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this, for those who don't know, I am a preacher's kid. So once in a while, a title will come out like Prodigal Son. And I love this song a lot. It was written for somebody who didn't feel like they could be out. And I wanted to kind of tell a hopeful story so that hopefully one day they could feel comfortable coming out. I've been out since I was 18, and it was interesting. The first time I let my mom hear that song, her response to it was so sweet. She was just like, man, I hope that young man gets to find his peace. It was so sweet. Such a great response from her. And one of the cool things I'll just say quickly for being a singer-songwriter, sometimes when we write songs, the story that we have in our mind isn't necessarily the story that people see in their minds when they are listening to it. It was so cool. I had written it for a specific person, and then I had this lovely mother of a trans kid come up to me once at a show and tell me how much that song resonated with her and how much it very much felt like her story, which was super cool. So that made me feel really good.
Wonderful. Well, let's take a listen to it now.
Yeah.
All right. This is Chris Matthews' Prodigal Son on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
In a town way down in Tennessee lives a teenage boy who's got a secret buried deep. He loves his mama like a good son ought to do. Loves his sister, loves his daddy, Lord. He loves his Bible too. He's been tossing, turning, losing sleep, his bloodshot eyes red from worry, so afraid that they might see. Well, little angel with the worried eyes, you got to realize only the truth will set you free. You are not broken, damaged, or confused. Don't let the hypocrites make you feel wrong for being you. It's such a heavy cross to bear for love and peace, but you got all your life to live, so why not live it free? 5 years later and still he's losing sleep in a college town 300 miles from Tennessee. He did the only thing that he could think to do, leave tonight or live and die this way. What would most of us choose? He keeps his family arms like the way he keeps the phone calls and the letters short, so scared what he might say. Well, little angel with the frightened heart, you got to finally start accepting all of who you are. You are not broken, damaged, or confused. Don't let the hypocrites make you feel wrong for being you. Such a heavy cross to bear for love and peace, but you got all your life to live, so why not live it free? In a town way down in Tennessee lives a mother sick with worry, wondering why her son can't sleep. He's been growing cold and distant by and by. Something about his voice and eyes tells her mind don't dare ask why. But in her heart she knows what she should do. A mother always knows, especially when her kids don't want her to. She says, little angel, don't you run from us, come on back home. Don't you know it doesn't matter who you love? You are not broken, damaged, or confused. Don't let the hypocrites make you feel wrong for being you. Such a heavy cross to bear for love and peace, but you got all your life to live, so why not live it free? So why not live it free? So why not live it free?
All right, Chris Matthews with the song Prodigal Son from her 2014 release, Come What May. And Chris Matthews joining us live today on the Back Catalog Listening Party. And it's funny that you mentioned your Appalachian roots, because I feel like when I was listening to that song, it had kind of that old mountain ballad kind of vibe to it. Obviously, the story, probably not one that we would have heard 200 years ago, at least not sung as publicly as it would be now, but it's kind of cool to sort of hear that sort of same form kind of reimagined for our lives now.
Yeah, that song, when I was on tour last summer, I had the pleasure of being on tour with J.J. Jones, who is just a phenomenal percussionist, and the way she plays on that song is exclusively the reason why I'm like, that is going to be re-recorded just so I can have JJ playing drums on it. It sounds so cool. It's just a mood. Some songs are just moods, like you just can feel them. And that song always is kind of just a mood for me.
Well, that one had a little natural percussion there. Was that your foot tapping, or were you tapping the guitar?
Yeah, just a little kick, little stomp pedal.
Yeah.
Get that little effect in there. Yeah.
Nice.
The earlier years, it was so much for me to just want to tell those stories. It was like, I didn't want anything like distracting from the storytelling or feeling like they would in any way or anything like that. So they're almost all of my first 4 or 5 albums are just me and the guitar and anything I can play. And if I couldn't play it myself, it didn't make the cut. So yeah, they're very, very stripped down.
Well, you mentioned growing up, with a preacher as a parent.
Yeah.
How much did church and that kind of those situations like influence you musically?
Yeah, I mean, my first love was gospel music. The first music I ever heard was my mom singing to me in the womb, and then as soon as I popped out. And I grew up singing in the church choir, and so yeah, definitely heavily influenced. Which ironically, well, not even ironically, just I say factually, in the South, so much of the Southern culture, there's such an intertwining of gospel music and country music and gospel music and soul music. There's so much interconnectivity between those genres. So, it doesn't feel like a foreign thing. It almost just is like just natural to have some kind of influence of gospel music. At least for those of us who are from the South, it's almost like hand in hand. You think about certain folks like Elvis, who released a gospel album, even though much of his music was so secular, and Sam Cooke, who released mostly secular music, who also has such deep gospel roots. It's like they just go hand in hand.
Awesome. Yeah, you can definitely hear it. And as Connie says, great message too.
Oh, thanks, Connie.
And I agree. What a great tune.
Appreciate
And
that.
yeah, and I totally appreciate too the PK-ness of that. I also am a PK, and my parents
Nice.
are tuned in from Connecticut right now, enjoying the music. And
Awesome.
one of the things that I that's interesting to hear this record, as you said, really stripped down, because your newer recordings obviously have a lot more
Yeah.
instrumentation, a little more produced, and do show some of that those other musical influences. Like you
Oh
hear
yeah.
some of that, the soul and blues, and some of those other influences on your music.
Yeah.
But it's really fun to just distill your songs down, because I feel like they are so potent. I feel like all of your songs from any stage of your career are really have a strong message to
Thanks.
them. And you really see yourself as a social justice songwriter, right?
Yeah, very much so. That's actually why I wanted to kind of go back and spend some time with this specific album. I feel like this was kind of my first dipping of the toe into the realm of social justice songwriting. I never set out to be a social justice songwriter. It just kind of happened. But when I go back and listen to songs like those, it was like I was kind of starting to realize that that's what I wanted to do with my music, was tell stories like that and try to reach people in a way that maybe the kid who that song is about never felt like they could. So yeah, it's interesting listening to those songs and kind of seeing where I am now with like, it's all I can do to write anything other than social justice music right now. But hearing those first songs, like the fledgling social justice songwriter, is kind of cool.
Did you have specific kind of social justice folk singer, idols or heroes that you were emulating, or were you listening to that kind of music at all?
I really wasn't. The first, I would say probably the only social justice music I heard ever before I was like, deeply rooted into the folk music scene, which, because folk music is very much married to social justice music. I remember Sweet Honey and the Rock coming to campus one year. They came to App, and I went to their concert. And the first time I heard Ella's song, I was just like in tears. And it's still to this day, I reference that song all the time. It's so powerful. But I think that is probably the first time I heard really social justice music in a way. And as I'm saying that, I'm also thinking back to like the Black History Month programs at church. And, we always, every single February, we would sing songs like Lift Every Voice and Sing, and we would sing We Shall Overcome. And in a way, those are social justice songs as well. But I guess they don't occur to me as being that, just because, it's just kind of like truth telling. And I guess in essence, that's what social justice music is, really. We're just kind of taking an account of what's happening in our lifetime and kind of making a record of it for future generations. So hopefully they'll learn something that we seem to have not learned yet. Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm going to have to spend some time thinking about that.
Well, it's interesting you say taking an account, because I think that is what the thread is between, folk music and why it's had such a long tie to social justice music and social justice movements, is because that's always what folk music has been about, right?
Yeah.
Is the storytelling and telling maybe a wider swath of stories than we hear in pop music, but it's the same kind of concept, for sure. And and I love, we need social justice writers. It's true. And we are so lucky to have Chris Matthews with us today, talking about Come What May, as she puts it, her fledgling social justice album, showing a little bit of what's to come for Chris Matthews. And Chris, you've been really busy during this time of quarantine. I just don't want, a lot of people we talk to are like, oh, I'm kind of taking some time off.
I'm so tired.
I know, right? So you have been doing regular, are you still doing them weekly?
No, we're actually we actually had to strip them back. We were burning the candlesticks at both ends. So as soon as the quarantine hit, kind of starting in, I think our first one was late March or early April, we did our first series called Apart Together. And so every single week, we didn't want our fans and our friends to feel so alone and so scared and so overwhelmed. And so we would just gather people very much in the true PK form, communing. And we would just gather folks and sing songs and just try to tell them a couple of fun stories and jokes and have games and different things like that to just help the isolation not feel so scary. And yeah, we did that every single week until our tour started. I lived with Heather Mann, another social justice songwriter. And we had this tour in June called the Singing Out Tour. And so even though we couldn't physically be touring, our agent is so amazing. He, believes very much in the mission of what that tour was all about. So he was like, we're still doing this. We're going to make this happen. So we had a virtual tour, the first ever virtual Pride tour. We played 24 shows, I think, in 30 days. It was still pretty packed.
Wow. And yeah, that's a busy schedule.
Yes, it is. So we were, from our living room, there was one night we had 2 shows. So that was like the blessing and the curse of the quarantine. So we played a show for Connecticut at like 7:00. And then at 9:00, we played a show for California. It was so fun. But
something that couldn't have happened.
Yeah. It's like we joke and call them the pandemic perks. They're like a handful of them, those little bits of sunshine and all the gray. You can find a few of them here and there. And that was definitely a pandemic perk. It was like we could play multiple shows in a short window because there's no gear to pack up. There's no driving. There's no tolls. So great.
And what was the reception like? Obviously, that was early days too, so people are just kind of getting used to this. Like as a performer, I know a lot of what we do is what comes back and goes back out, and that kind of circular thing. How were you able to kind of connect with the audience, and what kind of feedback did you get from those shows?
Yeah, we really tried to put forth a lot of effort in that because we couldn't physically be. So much of being a musician is that connection that you feel from people as they're receiving your music, and the energy that they're giving back to you from however you've touched them or however your songs have resonated with them. And so we try to be very intentional about making sure that we could actually still create as much of that as possible. So everything was done via Zoom, so we could still see people's faces, we could still react with them, interact with them. Heather was great about making sure people could actually still utilize the chat, like in real time, so we could still be interacting with them. We would be joking and be like, this is actually cool. This is like the first time ever you could actually talk during the entire show and not get in trouble.
I love it.
Pandemic perk.
Cool. Exactly. Pandemic perks.
Nice.
So yeah, it was cool. We tried to just be very intentional. We try to do that with our work in any way. And so in this endeavor, we tried to really be intentional as well. And folks received it very well. A lot of folks were still crying at the songs that we're used to them crying at in the real world on those shows. And we're still feeling those same things. So it was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I went to the one that you partnered with the Dakota here in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And I went to that show. I attended the show on Zoom, and I have to say it was beautiful because you guys really tried to weave in the local flavor for every stop along the tour.
Nice.
and it was cool because you're actually connecting with people. I mean, I guess in theory someone could buy tickets to every one of your shows, but like it was cool that most of the people were kind of local to that community, and so it was kind of neat, people sharing memories and local things, and it was such a fun show. So you guys have been working really hard at making that happen.
We have.
and it's paid off. But in addition to that, you've been writing a lot. And and learning banjo.
Yes, indeed.
Woo-hoo. And tending to a whole menagerie, because you have a few pets. Right?
Yeah. So we have 2 cats and a dog. And then 3 humans. We're almost outnumbered, but we're holding strong for now.
Do you have them all like locked in the back right now? Because
Juice, who is a professional musician's dog, I've had her since she was 8 weeks old. She'll be 14 in a few weeks. She is a professional, so she knows when I am doing this kind of thing, she's always very quiet. So
but the humans, not so much.
Oh no. I had to put out the word. I was like, don't go walking through the hallways naked. Somebody will see.
And I suppose there might be a few stories from your Zoom tour of things that made it through this.
Yeah, there were definitely a couple of times where the cat like made a cameo and wasn't supposed to make a cameo. It was, we have some adventures. We have definitely had some adventures.
Those are the best.
Oh, wonderful. Well, if folks just tuned in, we're here on the Back Catalog Listening Party today talking with Chris Matthews from her home in D.C. About life in quarantine, writing, making music, and and most especially her 2014 release, Come What May. And I want to make sure we get to hear more of these songs before, otherwise we could just chat about
Man,
everything
it's
else
just so fun
forever.
chatting with you both.
I know.
Absolutely.
We are starved for other adult company as well. So
Yeah, we have that same mission. We just want to communicate and touch. But
Exactly.
yeah, I also would love to hear the next tune that we have lined up, and just curious if you want to talk at all about Just a Matter of Time.
Yeah, so I actually was revisiting this. I'm supposed to play at a sister march of the Women's March this weekend, and was revisiting this song because it's from 2014, but it feels very pertinent to now. And I have really kind of fallen in love with this song again in this moment. So I'm so stoked to get to hear it again, and it is one of my favorite songs where somebody other than me is playing the music. Helen Houseman is playing violin on this song, and she is so
I was wondering who that was. Yeah,
oh my
great.
gosh, she's incredible.
Awesome. Yeah, it has some great textures, as you'll hear. Chris Matthews, Just a Matter of Time, on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Persecution feels like 1,000 things to 1,000,000 different people. 'Cause these days living here in the USA, justice keeps losing out to gold-plated steeples. It must be nice being them, living in the dream they're in. Like picking and choosing what to raise, Cain about might somehow masquerade their own sins. They'll call you a good Christian soldier, long as you keep them fed with a nice roof over their head. But when those trials knock on your door, you'll realize who it is you've been a soldier for. Yeah, they think just as little of you as you do of people just like me. But wake up, open up your eyes, when it's all said and done, you're gonna be the one on the outside looking in, yeah. You keep telling yourself they don't mean you until those chickens come on home to roost. And they will, 'cause they always do. It's just a matter of time before you're walking in my shoes. Revolution looks like 1,000 things to 1,000,000 different people. 'Cause these days being born in the USA doesn't mean enough for us to all be equals. It must be nice being you, living in the dream you're in. Make believing that the ones condemning me aren't the same ones judging your brown skin. You might be a few shades lighter than my rose chocolate, but the way some of them see it, if it isn't white, it isn't right. If it ain't rich, well, it ain't worth a spit. Yeah, they think just as little of you as you do of your own president. So wake up, open up your eyes, when it's all said and done, you're gonna be the one on the outside looking in, yeah. You keep telling yourself they don't mean you until those chickens come on home to roost. And they will, 'cause they always do. It's just a matter of time before you're walking in my shoes. Evolution brings up 1,000 things for 1,000,000 different people. And these days what we need in the USA is to evolve on what it means for us to all be equals. It must be nice being them, so entitled, so privileged. Make believe in this nation's hate-stained past didn't afford some of what that privilege built. Hasn't been so long ago now since women had no vote, no choice, and black folks had no voice. Suffragists, Abolitionists, Roe v. Wade, loving VVA in those Jim Crow days. Yeah, they think just as little of me now as they thought of some of us back then. Wake up, open up your eyes when it's all said and done. You're gonna be the one on the outside, looking in. Keep telling yourself they don't mean you until those chickens come on home to roost. And they will, 'cause they always do. It's just a matter of time before you're walking in my shoes. It's just a matter of time before you're walking in my shoes. In my shoes.
All right, Chris Matthews here on the Back Catalog Listening Party. Just a matter of time from her 2014 release, Come What May. Chris joining us live from DC today, and Connie said perfect song for right now, and I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, so was I.
But
It's like I was a prophet, Connie.
well, it was funny because I was like, is this this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I've been listening to a lot of, kind of protest music and stuff that's trying to keep me fired up and inspired to keep fighting the good fight during these crazy times. But what's interesting is the songs that stay relevant, and it's like, on the one hand, it's like, as a songwriter, it's like, oh, good, my song is relevant. On the other hand, it's like, oh, bad, my song is still relevant.
It's like, oh,
like, oh, I wish this wasn't so timely right now.
yeah.
Well, I feel like for a lot of us, I'll just say me, straight white guy. I don't know if I would have heard this song when it came out, but I sure heard it now.
Yeah.
And it's so important that that we do, and that your voice is out there. And again, I agree with Connie. This really is what a lot of us need to hear.
Thanks, Tony. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and especially all the stuff about voting and all of that, and all of you out there. I'm betting all the back catalog people have probably voted or made a plan, but they're a little PSA. Participate, vote.
Please participate in this
Yes,
democracy of ours.
there's still time.
Yes.
For sure. And Gary says, Chris the prophet. It's very true. So
My new podcast coming in 2021.
well, speaking of one of the other things that you're doing, because again, you are not bored at all, is you also have a Patreon. So and one of the cool things is that's been really fun for me to discover about my favorite artists is obviously Patreon is a way of directly supporting artists, especially during this time when they're not touring. Yeah. But what I love is seeing people's other maybe non-musical interests getting woven into the Patreon. So it's like not just about music, but also maybe something else that you're into. And definitely if you're interested in the more sort of social justice or community organizing aspect of what Chris is doing, you weave that into your Patreon, right?
Yeah, definitely. So one of my tiers is the Changemakers tier, and we actually are doing what's called a Changemakers Roundtable. So it's me kind of getting to share my thoughts and insights on the things that inspire my music, because there's so many social justice songs. So, one of my favorite books, I'd say of all time, and definitely one of most recent time, is Dr. King's book, Why We Can't Wait. And so the roundtable was a chance for us to kind of discuss excerpts from books like that, from thinkers and change makers like that, and kind of discuss them in the context of this modern time. So please come on over.
Excellent.
Yeah, we put the link there in the comments, so you can click right on over after the show. That is.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And it's a great way of also, again, just supporting what Chris does, as well as,
Absolutely.
of course, throwing something in the virtual tip jar. And for folks who want to hear, we're going to hear some more songs, of course, before the end of this. By the way, I love that Joe's at the campground, because that's
and
where,
clapping.
I know, that's important. And in fact, the best, of course, social justice music does make you clap and want to sing, for sure, while you're marching. But yeah, that's where we'll be actually this time tomorrow. My family will be in a campground in Iowa. So
Nice.
fingers crossed that there won't be snow there.
Ooh.
In any event, what I was going to say was, this album. This album is available on all the digital platforms. We're going to definitely hear some more songs before we go today, but if you want to hear it in its entirety, you should. And it's sold out of CD copies.
Yeah.
But you can find Chris's other amazing records as well on her website, so you can check that out. And this next song we have queued up, eventually, also has a subtitle, D.O.M.A.
Yes, it does. Yeah, so this was actually, I wrote this song the day after the D.O.M.A decision came down. For me at that time, I was engaged to my who would soon be my wife. And it was like, when people ask me what made you kind of start writing social justice music, what got you into that? And I have to say, honestly, it was like a switch flip the moment I was going to have to be responsible for the happiness of another human. It was like, I just wanted this world to be as good as it possibly could. And so it was like my way of kind of trying to make that happen in some small way in my little corner of the world. And so this song eventually I wrote after the D.O.M.A decision came down. It was such an incredible feeling. It was something that I didn't know for sure that I would actually get to see in my lifetime, marriage equality become the law of the land. And it was just so powerful. I think it must have been how my grandparents felt when the Voting Rights Act passed. And it was just so beautiful and so powerful. And I wrote this song right away, just start to finish the next day. And so I'm stoked to listen to it with all of you today.
This is definitely a highlight for me. This is Chris Matthews, eventually D.O.M.A on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
It's been a long, long time coming, but the change is finally on its way. We got 2 big notches in our social justice belt. Tonight we're gonna celebrate. Tomorrow morning we'll be right back on that grind, trying to keep politicians from turning back the hands of time. The war is still raging on, but this time we've got the victory. You think they learned by now to live and let live and just let freedom ring. But anyway, thank you to the heroes and sheroes who kept the movement going somehow. It's been hard, but I wouldn't give nothing for my journey now. Well, D is for done, D is for dead, D is for don't ever come after us again. O is for over, for out with the old, for one voice rising up against the status quo. And M is for Massachusetts and Maryland, showing us how to get it done. And A is for always ending up on the right side of history eventually. We spend too long living with this second-class status on our backs. And now our highest court has finally said enough. This country's come too far for that. But rest assured, the next few years, they won't be easy. But freedom is worth the fight, just so you don't forget that it's worth keeping. The war is still raging on, but maybe one day it won't be. Maybe the next generation will learn to live and let live and just let freedom ring. But anyway, thank you to the heroes and sheroes who fought and won this battle somehow. This is a new day and I wouldn't give nothing for my journey now. D is for done, D is for dead, D is for don't ever come after us again. O is for over, for out with the old, for one voice rising up against the status quo. And M is for Massachusetts and Maryland, showing us how to get it done. And A is for always ending up on the right side of history eventually. Oh, 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 oh. You don't have to go. Oh, 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 oh. But you can't keep turning your back on half of us. You can't keep turning your back on progress. How much longer would you have us wait for a seat at a table that we helped make? That we helped make. D is for done, D is for dead, D is for don't ever come after us again. O is for over, for out with the old form. One voice rising up against the status quo. And M is for Massachusetts and Maryland, showing us how to get it done. And A is for always. Always, 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 always ending up on the right side of history. Eventually. Eventually. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh.
All right. Yeah. Chris Matthews here on the Back Catalog listening party with Eventually from her 2014 release Come
It's
What
an
May.
awesome tune.
So
Thanks, man.
good.
Appreciate that.
And I love that you wove in that old pop tune with
Totally.
that, because it makes it gives such a brightness and a lightness to a serious song, but it also
Yeah.
captures the joy and the hope, which I think was obviously a part of that song, but also I feel like the best social justice songs have that hope and that
Yeah.
belief that there's light at the end, because
Yeah.
if you don't, why are you singing these songs? Like I feel
Exactly.
like you have to believe that change is possible, right?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I think that sometimes people assume that anything that talks about heavy subjects has to feel heavy.
Yeah.
And I think this is such a perfect example of like, no, it can be fun and catchy and
Exactly.
positive. And I feel like this is such a perfect example of that.
Well,
Thank
and
you
it
so much.
seems to step back a little bit and look at maybe a bigger picture view of the product. Sometimes it feels so hopeless
Yeah.
in our situation, and I hate to say the battle, still
Yeah.
is still what it is today. But
Yeah.
but I would also love to believe that, eventually.
Definitely. Yeah, it's I still get a little bit teary-eyed listening to that song actually. I was sitting here as I was listening to it thinking about RBG being kind of welcomed in by Edith Windsor and like the two of them up there hugging somewhere, like we did that, So cool. But yeah, it's just we have so much work to do, but I think part of my job as a social justice songwriter is to not just tell the stories in a way that just makes everything feel so hopeless and desolate, because you really want to just inspire people. It's like, I might not be the person who's going to be president someday, but like if my song inspires somebody who's going to be their campaign manager one day, like I can be like, we did that. You know what I mean? So you always want to try to inspire hope. It's hope and love are the things that always move us forward. They always have been, they always will be. So anything I can do to keep on spreading a little bit of hope and love, I'm going to do.
Amen.
Yeah, for sure. And I have to say, I remember in Minnesota, you did not include Minnesota in that list. I know.
I did not, no.
But that's okay.
The rhyme is so hard for Minnesota.
But not if you speak like a Minnesotan, then you
That's
make
true.
a lot of things rhyme with it. But
That's true.
but I will say that I remember that when Minnesota on a state level voted, there was a campaign to fake gay marriage and same-sex marriage, and but they pushed for it so hard that it totally got shot down. And I remember when that happened because it was on my birthday that year,
No.
and I was in St. Paul, and I could hear cheering emanating from the Capitol, from where I was in downtown, and it was such a beautiful moment to just hear it was just interesting because you said, love and hope is what's going to get us through, and when
Yeah.
things are based on fear, they're not successful. So
Yeah.
Anyway, I love the song and I love the message, and
Thank you.
yeah, and both Tony and I too, I don't know if I told you this, Chris, but after all the events that happened here in South Minneapolis earlier this summer following the killing of George Floyd, Tony and I live not too far from there, and we put this show back catalog on pause, and we actually just did a community like little listening hang. And we just played music that was making us feel good, and just talked with our neighbors and stuff online. And one of your songs, actually, we played for that. We played "We Must Be Free."
Thank you.
And so I feel like, again, this is the music we need right now, and it feels really, really timely. Even though that song, thankfully, at the moment, is not timely.
Yeah, so far, but I am getting nervous.
Vote. Did we mention vote, everybody?
Exactly.
We'll just say that
everybody,
again.
I saw somebody like straight out of the gate. They were like, "I'm here. I voted today."
Yeah.
Like everybody else, go ahead and take this time. Did you vote today too?
That's all right.
Have
It's
you
okay to
already
close
voted?
the YouTube right now.
Yeah, exactly. Right now, that's the one thing. That's the one excuse for not staying here in the back catalog listening party.
Yeah.
And banjo practice has come up before,
banjo
right?
practice,
Penny,
right.
if you're out there.
That's true. Banjo practice and voting, the two most important things.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have, I know we can at least get through one song, maybe two. So the next one we have queued up is Don't Forget My Name. And is there anything you want to say about this?
I'll say that this is another one that's kind of a timely one, especially what we were just talking about with George Floyd. This song I wrote for Trayvon Martin after he was killed. It was another one of those things that just kind of hit me so hard, because he was so young, and he just, he looked like I have two little cousins who are 8 years younger than me, who have grown up like little brothers to me my entire life, their entire lives. And looking at his picture, all I could see was the two of them. And so it just really, really struck me. And so this song, before there was "We Must Be Free," there was "Don't Forget My Name." And it actually ended up being the impetus for a side project I do called the Don't Forget My Name Project. The graphic is actually my profile picture on almost all of my social media right now. And so, I'm so sad that I had to write this song. But again, it's one of those where you just hope that you are telling the story, that you are making that accounting for future generations, so that they know what he was, who he was, and that his life mattered.
All right, this is Chris Matthews. Don't Forget My Name on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Well, it was February 26th. The night air was cool and thick. It started to rain. I was on my phone. It was a little past 7 and I was almost home. Then a strange man, he caught my eye. No matter where I turned, I couldn't get out of his sight. I was getting scared, or something wasn't right. And what happened next would change both our lives. I could have just backed down, but I stood my ground. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. He'll keep living each day. I'll be buried in this grave, but I bet you this, he won't forget my name. Well, I was on my phone with a real good friend, and I described to her what was happening. He was staring me down like I had done something wrong, like I was breaking the law, like I didn't belong. So I slowed my pace just to think things through. And my friend, she asked, why's he following you? Then she told me to run just as fast as I could, 'cause it was pretty clear that he was up to no good. I could have just backed down, but I stood my ground. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. He'll keep living each day. I'll be buried in this grave, but I bet you this, he won't forget my name. Well, I heard his car door close, he was coming for me. Thought, what if he followed me home and hurt my family? Be brave, go back, so what, he's bigger and older. But when he saw me, he reached like he had a gun holstered. I panicked, rushed him, punched him in the nose. He stumbled, rushed me, started throwing blows. Help me, I was screaming so loud. Then it all went quiet when that shot rang out. About the time that bullet pierced my heart, I saw Emmett and met her there with outstretched arms. So tell Daddy not to worry, tell Mama not to weep for me. Her strangers hate and fear are what brought me here. Brothers and sisters, your love is gonna set me free. Don't you forget my name, don't you forget my name. I couldn't just back down, but I stood my ground. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. He'll keep living each day, I'll be buried in this grave. But I bet you this, he won't forget my name. Don't forget my name.
Chris Matthews here on the Back Catalog Listening Party. Don't Forget My Name, her homage to Trayvon Martin on her album Come What May. And that last, I guess that was the stomp box again at the end. In my headphones, it was so pronounced. And
Yeah.
is that meant to be a heartbeat?
Yes, it is. Yeah, a slowing heart. Yeah.
Wow.
Powerful.
Powerful tune. And yeah, it was also interesting to hear, and I hear this a lot in your music, clearly the influence of some of the old spiritual music, but but also some of those phrases that you hear from other old folk songs, like ain't gonna let nobody turn me around.
Exactly.
Phrases like that. And it's interesting hearing those. I mean, it's very much what Pete Seeger called the folk process, of weaving these old kind of themes and lyrics into contemporary situations.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, that's, sometimes those phrases hold very significant weight, I will say, for specific communities. That one in particular, so many Black people in this country have marched or have, heard their relatives talking about marching to that song, to that tune, Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around. And so it was like, in my generation, the aftermath of his killing was kind of what started so many people my age and younger on this journey of protesting, of having to go out to the streets to lift our voices in that way. And so to kind of intentionally harken back to a song that was kind of an anthem for our ancestors marching and lifting their voices was an intentional decision in that way. I'm a nerd. I love to do stuff like that. I hope at some point somebody will go through and find all those little Easter eggs and make my little nerd heart pitter patter.
The annotated version of your album.
I will say, as a folk nerd myself, I definitely appreciate all of those old song callbacks. And
absolutely. I mean, that's the oral tradition of folk music, really.
Yeah, right.
And we're all nerds.
Yeah, exactly.
Proud nerds. Proud
nerds. And if you guys are nerds out there too, and you have questions too for Chris, I should have been putting this call up sooner. Certainly, if you have any more last minute questions, feel free to throw them in the comments, and we'll try and get to those before the end of today's show. And I also wanted to ask you, Chris, about. Yeah. Oh my gosh, the question came and went, except to say that, oh, I love this. This is the soul and sound and rhythm we need for the new protest, for sure.
Thank you.
I love that. And, I know what I was going to ask you. It has nothing to do with the folk music. That's probably why. It got me distracted thinking about folk things. But I have to ask, because you said you were a nerd for kind of going back into history and some of that stuff, what would you be doing if you weren't doing music?
Oh gosh, well, okay. If I wasn't doing this type of music, I would definitely be doing what I went to school for, which is being a high school band director. But if I wasn't
Cool.
being a high school band director, I would probably I would, chances are good at this point and the way the country is right now, I probably would be working for somebody's grassroots organization. Like I would be in the street somewhere, putting out yard signs, like trying to get people to vote, just hitting the pavement. I would be doing something grassroots oriented, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
totally I can totally see that, but I have to ask about the band teacher thing for
Yeah.
just a minute. So, what other instruments do you play? Like, if you're studying to be a band teacher, you
Yeah.
probably learn all of them, right?
Yes, so I have a sixth grade proficiency on most everything, because you have to. So they figure as a band director, if you can play it well enough for a sixth grader, you can get somebody through like some section if they're playing it wrong or something like that. So yeah, I had to take French horn class, trumpet, clarinet was actually my primary instrument. I actually am a classically trained clarinetist. So
Oh, wow.
well before playing guitar or banjo or anything, I played clarinet.
Love the
for
clarinet.
a
That's such a
long
great
time.
instrument.
Yeah,
Well,
it's fantastic.
I never played clarinet, but I did play oboe, which
Nice.
might be it's just even nerdier than the
It
clarinet.
really is. It's like somebody took the clarinet and was like, how can we make this just a little bit stranger? Put
Yeah,
that weird
exactly.
little mouthpiece up.
Well,
Yeah.
someone pointed out once that the oboe is or like the banjo is like the oboe of like the string band world, and I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that analogy for sure.
Well, I have to ask then, because if you play clarinet, and I know on this record that we've been exploring today, again, it's pretty stripped down compared to
Yeah.
some of your other records, and with the exception of the tune with the violin on it,
Yeah.
like all the instrumentation is you. Are we ever going to get clarinet on a record?
I'm
Ooh, yeah.
I'm feeling like maybe this next record. I was supposed to put out this album this year called Changemakers, and of course the pandemic had other plans, but I'm still determined to put that album out. So you may very well get some clarinet on the next album.
I mean, I could hear kind of like a New Orleans-y clarinet
Yeah.
thing going on in your music, and it would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Speaking of the next album, when we were talking before the show, you mentioned that your patrons on Patreon are going to get a sneak peek of the new
Yep.
album. And is that kind of like a place where people could go if they're interested in
Yeah,
hearing
absolutely.
that clarinet solo that now we're all
Well,
we're all
know,
going to be
you-
waiting for?
You will not hear the
Clarinet,
solo.
clarinet. I want to hear it. Anyways, is that so? You said you were going to be dropping a brand new single.
Yeah,
Is that
absolutely.
correct?
So it will not have a clarinet solo on it, but yes, I'll be dropping a new single. Actually, my patrons are going to get to hear it tonight, called "How Many More." I released a stripped down version of that earlier this month for a project. USPS is part of the Accidentals and Peter Mulvey and a bunch of other phenomenal social justice singer-songwriters helping to get out the vote in support of the Postal Service. So
Yes.
it's for, I think it's United Songwriters for the People's Sovereignty, kind of a play
Nice.
off that. And so some folks have gotten to hear a stripped down version of it, but hearkening back to my gospel roots, the actual version has what sounds like a huge full choir at the end. There are drums. It's amazing. Produced by Heather May here in our home in DC. And
Awesome.
it's
And your
phenomenal.
Your
And so,
patrons
yeah,
will get to hear this tonight.
you're going to get to hear it tonight.
So,
if you wanna-
if you're listening and you want to hear this tonight, you go
Yeah.
right to this Patreon link we put in the comments. Sign up, and you too will be one of the first.
Yep.
And for sure, if there is a clarinet thing to be heard, I'm betting it will be on Patreon first.
Yes,
And-
it will. It absolutely will.
And Alan, yeah, he asked, how about the accordion? Is this one of the instruments that you had to learn for band?
So, Alan, they just don't teach accordion like they used to, my friend. Not a lot of accordion in the high school band program for whatever reason. So no, I do not play accordion. I'm
Yet.
playing some banjo pretty regularly. You actually will get to hear me playing banjo and not guitar or keys on this song coming out tonight. But yeah, no accordion. I'll put it on my list though.
But the banjo is a gateway instrument to things like oboe and accordion, so
Yeah.
be careful.
I love that gateway instrument. So
I
fun.
don't. You might not have had that planned, Chris. Sorry about that. Anyway, well, this has been so much fun.
It really has. What a
having you
great
on.
great
And,
hour.
It's so great to see your face and
Yours
to
too.
hear. And I didn't even get to ask you about the bow tie you're wearing
I
today.
know.
But
I know. It's Parisian. I got this in Paris this past summer.
okay, for those of you who don't know, Chris Matthews might possibly have the most extensive collection of bow ties of anyone I know.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a problem.
Yeah. And how about, because you had a different one on earlier, right? When you
So
were voting?
I had this one on. It's just tucked in. I like to do a little pattern mixing so you can see it just ever so subtly. It
Very
also
nice.
matches my pants, which you cannot see. But yeah, I have quite the collection. I'm, as I said, folks, a nerd. That is what the young people call real talk. They are color coded and organized.
Do you have like a database for your bow ties?
It's not, I mean, it's a metaphorical database. It's like they're in order in that way, you know, and like the ones that are fun, like my Wonder Woman bow ties, of which I have two because one has a slightly different pattern. And so when in Nerdland, you have to be all the way in Nerdland. So
Yes.
I
Yeah,
needed
absolutely.
both
I
of
want to see
them.
Wonder Woman bow tie with clarinet in the next
Oh,
promo
Perfect.
photo.
That's going to be the album cover, folks.
That's
there we
it.
go.
All right, folks.
Tony's made it happen. And we have one question before you go, Chris,
Sure.
which is Penny, who is a budding banjo player herself, asks clawhammer or bluegrass?
Clawhammer, hand down. And Penny, just to nerd out with you because you opened this gateway yourself.
Thanks, Penny.
It's a left-handed banjo, but because I play the guitar upside down and backwards, my friend Kathy helped me get it custom made so that my strings are in order the way that I'm used to hearing my guitar. So my lower strings are on the bottom. I still got my drone string up top so I can do some mean clawhammer, but yeah, it's a custom little nerd-tastic banjo.
Wow. That's got to be a really interesting sound with the low notes on the bottom. I'd love
It's
to
super cool.
hear that. Is that we can hear some of that then, you said, on the new
You can
record?
hear it tonight. You could hear it tonight.
All right, folks, on the Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, we do want to thank, we have a few folks who support the Back Catalog Listening Party Patreon as we start to expand to more platforms. And we're working on a new website. And next week we have a big after party with our guests. So there's things like that you can get involved in. And we have a holiday party coming up, a virtual holiday party, which you can get in on if you support at any level. Penny, Ann, Alinda, Bevan, Connie, Vaughn, Alan, Chris, Alex, Becky, Galen, and Peggy, thank you all so much for supporting.
Yes, thank you
the Back Catalog
guys.
Listening Party.
Yeah, I'm getting close to the website so that we can archive all this stuff. Like I feel like as a nerd, as a fellow nerd, I miss those days when we could sit around and look at the back of the album and read all the notes. You know, here's who took the pictures and here's who engineered it and all that kind of stuff. And I'd love to think that these little vignettes, these little hour-long vignettes, will be part of that for people who want to nerd out on Chris Matthews' record in the future.
For sure. And I want to thank Connie just said, thanks for a really inspiring show in a scary time. And it's true. I find myself going, Chris, to your music more and more these days, which
so
is
much.
both good for you and scary maybe for the rest of the world. But I know whatever happens next, you will be there to document it because that's what you do so well. And we are so grateful for your music and your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us
for
today.
having me. What an absolute delight. I had a blast.
This was a lot of fun, and this is what it's all about for us, getting together with other artists, other people. Thank you guys for coming to YouTube and hanging out with us, for your comments. Please share it. If you liked what you heard, please hit the like button. The YouTube algorithm will thank us and send it to more people so more people can hear Chris Matthews' music. So thanks again, everybody, and until next week, enjoy all this wonderful music, and cheers.
Nice to see you, Chris.
Cheers. You too.